What's up, team, and welcome to the Kaisa Show. We have a very, very special show in store because we have a very special guest. Luca, how are you doing?
What up? The caffeine is kicking in. I'm on a up and up crescendo right now. So
yeah, how many C4s are you on right now?
The first one. I'm ending it though.
Okay.
But he has a full C4 right here. Team, so we are going to have a discussion about recovery today because I feel like recovery has been the number one questions that I've been receiving. And then personally, I'm in a season of massive recovery. And so, selfishly, I want to dig into this topic, but also the people really want to hear from you about this. So we're really excited to dive in.
You're going to be subject A. Every time we talk about a topic.
That's nice.
Kaisa will be subject A. Well, in Kaisa's situation, here's what's happening.
I feel like that's good. I'm going to benefit from that, so I appreciate that.
I have some personal scenarios I'd like to run
by you
too.
We can bring you into this. No problem.
You're subject B. Wait, Mike,
subject B.
How are you doing? Sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out.
Cool. When we get a guest team,
but you're
we
not
see
a
how
guest.
it really goes. I'm good. I'm excited to talk recovery. I'm currently, still recovering from my Spartan race and just got a couple weird things going on. So I'm kind of treating this like a little bit like a doctor's appointment.
Of course
I got to put my robe on.
Yeah.
Call him Dr. Luca.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, can we dive in?
Let's dive in.
All right. So, Luca, what is recovery? Can we get this overarching description or definition of what recovery is?
Yeah. I'm going to try to keep it not too geeky, but if anybody that's ever heard of homeostasis, okay, homeostasis means that's where our body wants to keep us, right? Where it's healthy. Think of blood pressure, your heart rate, your body temperature, right? If you go too far out of homeostasis, you die. No bueno. So your body wants to keep you in homeostasis. Stress is when there's an input that basically not gets you out, but starts getting you out of homeostasis, right? So if I go and lift a weight or sprint really fast, what happens? Heart rate goes up. If I'm lifting a heavy weight, blood pressure goes up, right? And so there's different ways that you can stress the body. There's physical stress, obviously. There's mental stress. We'll talk about the mental stress part of it later. And then recovery essentially ends up becoming your body working to get itself back into homeostasis, right? And it's the chemical processes that happen to get you back, right? So if I'm going to lift, go do a hard training session, my nervous system is going to be more fatigued, right? And then, of course, my muscle tissue is going to be fatigued. And what happens after that, your body's going to do a whole bunch of stuff to try to get it back into that homeostasis and prepare it for the next time. Meaning, so that's why if you lift weights, your bones get denser, you put on muscle. If you do conditioning, obviously your VO2 max can improve, you build more mitochondria, right? So it's always your body's is built for survival, right? It doesn't care about your six-pack abs and how fast you run and all that good stuff. It just wants to make sure it keeps you alive. That's number one, right? That's the most important thing that it does. So essentially recovery ends up being it putting things into process to get you back into homeostasis. That's the 101 of that.
Luca. Okay, team, we're going to pause for 1 second. That was so good because here's the thing. Before we went on this podcast, I told Luca he can talk about things in such intense detail that they can go on for 5 to 10 minutes and then I can't even remember what he's talking about. So I need bite-sized pieces of information and then I need to be able to ask a question. And so I told Luca, listen, you have to bite-size it for me so that I can interject, ask questions. And also, I don't want everybody listening to think I'm rude because I'm interrupting.
Rude.
Luca, high five from across the table.
Nice work.
That was so awesome. One of the number one things also is the statement you made to me the other day. And you said, Kaisa, you can only train as hard as you can recover. And that was I made you say it 10 times and then I posted it and now I have that in my brain. Can you break that down for a second?
Yeah, well, we'll probably dive deeper into that because there's multiple facets to this. I'll mention it right now. So there's 5 things that we'll kind of touch on today. 1 is move, 2 is train, 3 is eat, 4 is sleep, and then 5 is regenerate, right? And each one of those plays a role in recovery. But really what it comes down to is that, and I would say most people listening to this have probably experienced it, even though they may not have been able to kind of like put their finger on it, right? Example, right? They're like, oh, I'm gonna get in shape, and you start training and you see results, and then you hit a plateau, and you train just as hard, and you push yourself, and you start getting tired and exhausted, and you're like, man, my numbers are going down, or like I don't feel like I'm getting stronger. Why am I always tired? You're training harder than you can recover from. Now, it may not be just your training, and you're a perfect example right now where there's a lot of stuff going on in your life. There's stress going on. You have to factor all those things in, like stress from life, right? Stress is stress. So I'm going to reference books, obviously, you know that, right? But from, Sapolsky wrote a book. It's called Why Zebras Don't Have Ulcers, right? And really, if you think about it, when you look at the animal kingdom, right? You have an animal that gets, for instance, attacked. Okay, fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system. But then once that's done, they're going to chill, right? That's the only two things that happen. For humans, we have this thing called the prefrontal cortex, right? Consciousness. And so, a threat, like no lion is attacking us right now, or that what would be something like very, very threatening, like actual, like real life threat would be somebody attacks you with a knife or something like that. Very, very, not saying it doesn't happen, but very unlikely to happen, right? But what's the threat? You sit there and you think about your bills, stress. That's a perceived threat, right? You sit there thinking about something that happened that was stressful, a trauma, threat. You think about all the work that you have to do the rest of this week, stress. You think about your boyfriend, it's like he's stressing you out, right? This is all stress.
Luckily, Kaisa doesn't have to think about that.
Oh! Wow!
Hey, well,
how do you know that might have changed last night?
Hey, listen,
God!
Thankfully, we at least have one thing. We have one thing that we don't have to worry about.
Because I was like, check. Oh, she actually
reduction.
That one we don't have.
You
to
know
have
what?
that.
Hey,
That's
for
good.
right now, let's keep it that way to keep the stress low.
Yes, 100%.
Right.
We are closing the gates right now for Date Kaisa. We are not taking any admission at this time.
Swipe down.
Shots fired.
Not left or
Mike.
right. Swipe down. Oh.
That's a good one.
But yes, stress. Sorry, I had to distract you,
but there's so many studies, and maybe we can even put it in the show notes if anybody wants to geek out. But if you they took a groups of people that were like high stress, moderate stress, and they did how fast they recover from training sessions, and it was, dramatically faster. That we're talking about their strength. For instance, the moderate or low stress group would do a strength training session. Within 2 days, they would repeat a strength training session, actually be stronger in that session. High stress group, even after 4 days, they still couldn't. They were actually below that strength level. And these are, like I said, these are pretty deep studies that you can look into, and it's not like a one-time thing. There's been meta studies done on all this stuff, and the same goes for sleep, which I think we'll do as a separate kind of topic. But again, like sleep is the ultimate kind of recovery tool, right? You don't sleep enough, next day you're tired, you're grumpy, you're still in sympathetic mode, fight or flight. You can't perform as well. So it's not just the workout, even though the workout is one thing that we do have to look at. That's why I said there's those 5 things that we look at. You got to look at everything that's happening in life, and then adjust your training. So for instance, if you're stressed the hell out, going all out in your training probably doesn't make the most sense.
Yeah. Amen. And I do think I lost my train of thought. It was so important. See?
That quick question.
Look, it wasn't that important then.
That important, yeah.
It's gonna come. It's gonna come.
Do
back
you
up.
think so? With sleep, I know we'll dive into that later, but with sleep, is it that you recover so much because it's like when your consciousnness is sort of like turned off and you're not thinking about the bills or the things that you have going on? Is that part of why sleep is so recovery?
That's a part of it, but a bigger part of it is think of it like this. Stress is catabolic, right? Muscle. So catabolic means breaking down, right? Breaking down was tissues, muscle, and basically when you recover, it's anabolic, right? So that's building up. And sleep is the most anabolic thing that we can do. Like there, and if you excellent book by Matthew Walker, It's called Why We Sleep. And another one from my friend Sean Stevenson is like Sleep Smarter. And you can kind of dive into like when you start realizing all the things that happen during sleep, even our emotional health, you know, as we go through NREM and REM sleep, like we take in so much data throughout the day. When you sleep, basically what your brain does in a healthy way is like gets rid of all the stuff that you don't have to think about, but you kind of maintain the memories that matter, right? But that process, like if you don't sleep a lot, you start having like your emotional regulation sucks more. Like you have more trauma. You got to dive into it. It's actually pretty gnarly stuff. But meaning that sleep is mentally, emotionally, physically, like basically restorative. Yeah. Right. And that's also a reason why the amount of sleep that you get and how well you sleep matters so much. Right. And it's the big rock, because we're going to talk about a bunch of different things today that's recovery based. You got big rocks, medium rocks, and you got pebbles and sand, and I think that today there's a lot of people that will be like, hey, which, should I take ashwagandha, which actually is a good recovery supplement, but it's like, that's a pebble or a small rock, and they'll be like buying all these supplements, but they sleep a crappy 5 hours a night, it will not even touch it, right? So if you can get, from 5 hours of sleep to like 7 hours of sleep, it's like taking illegal steroids. I mean, that's how much of a difference you can feel. I mean, I actually have a personal story that we can maybe touch on later.
You were doing steroids. I personally take illegal steroids.
It felt like it when I improved my sleep, but it legitimately, right? It's that big of a difference. So again, I think that's a big part of recovery. I think it has to be individualized. But I also think that you, just like anything else, what are the things that move, just like in your business, there's things that move things forward a lot, and there's things that don't really make that much of a difference. And I think because of marketing today too, right? It's kind of like, get this thing or cryo chamber, and talk about that too. But it's gonna like just magically make you recover. But where sleep is really, really high up there, and that's a massive rock when it comes to recovery.
I remembered what I was saying, only because I think a lot of times when people think of recovery, they think of, I'm only going to recover when I have an injury. And I think for me as a young athlete, that was kind of my initial mentality of, I want to work, because while people are taking a break or recovering, I'm just going to keep doing more work, because then I'm going to get better and better. And it wasn't until I was completely broken and then I found mobility and I started working on recovery that finding that balance actually helped me perform at a more maximal level than I ever had when I was, in college and training harder. And so I think that's we're going to kind of like probably break this out today, but it's a really important thing for people to understand that recovery has to go into your overall schedule, because it's not just about, oh, I have an injury, I want to recover from that. It's like you want to recover from things that are going to be happening in your daily life. We're all stressed daily. Like there's a lot that's happening, so you have to figure out that schedule.
It's critical. So I kind of have the same experience, but I was like an overachiever, overworker. I'll do whatever it takes. But what I would recommend to people is this, right? If you are that type of A-type personality, I think that we all train and do things in life to get a result. Now, we also do, when you train, it's kind of stress releasing in a way, right? Even though we're creating stress, mentally it's good for you, for most people, right? They do it to like calm down or not think about the things that are kind of stressing them out in a daily life. But what I would recommend is that, you put that effort into the other pockets, right? So if it's like, oh, I'm just training super hard because I want to get the best results, there's a certain point in time where you start hurting yourself, right? It's like, okay, I'm getting the most out of this. And then when I get over that, now I'm starting to actually hurt my results and get injuries, too much inflammation, fatigue, so on and so forth. What if I put a lot of that focus and effort into recovery nutrition, improving my sleep? And I'll tell you that right now, like I've trained, honestly, probably 1,000 plus, just athletes, let alone, thousands and thousands of clients. I don't know one person that I started training and their sleep was great. So what if they put some of the effort in there? What if they put some effort into recovery strategies, soft tissue modalities and sleep and regeneration workouts? And we'll talk about actual workouts to actually help you promote recovery. and now you put that effort into that, and all of a sudden you get this, boost in your performance, your results, feeling better. And I think that's kind of the key of effort. Is like, yeah, work hard, but work smart.
Amen. How do people know how much to recover, though? I think that's a big question too. Is like, let's just say it's general population. It's not an elite athlete. How do they know how much they should be doing for recovery and what types? Like, is there a category? Is there an amount of like effort each day? Is it several times a week? Like, can you talk through a general population recovery?
Yeah, here's the thing. It definitely becomes individual, and I think that the main thing is to kind of let's go through those five different kind of categories that we talked about early, and I'll break them down for general pop a little bit. First is move, and everybody's heard about the 10,000 steps. Like, there's no science behind that, by the way. I think it was the Japanese made this little step counter, and because the way that they promoted it, for marketing purposes, it was a cool thing to do 10,000 steps. There's absolutely no science behind it.
No way.
Yes, absolutely. I can actually give you guys probably a link in the show notes so you can listen to that, because everybody goes like, you should walk 10,000 steps a day. It's like, and if you ask a person like, why? Well, that's recommended. Where's it coming from? Yeah. It's based on nothing. So to say, it's an energy balance thing, and I don't want somebody to listen to this and go like, I got to go home and calculate all these things. You don't. Look, if you're not moving much, and you look at your phone and you're walking 2,000 steps a day, it'd probably be a good idea to move more. That's if you want to feel fitter, if maybe one of your goals is losing weight, maybe I would say it's just like feeling better, right? Because movement, we know that what it does is it aligns things like norepinephrine and dopamine, and that's why if you've ever been anxious and you go for a walk in nature, like, you're not as anxious, or you might not be anxious at all, right? Just because chemicals in our body and our brain start changing. So move is also like, we do it a lot, you do it a lot, whereas just moving to feel better, right? I mean, if you start doing some mobility flows, right? Again, it's not just physically, but mentally. It shifts you out of, I always say, get out of your head, go into your heart, right? You start moving, you stop thinking about the stuff that's bugging you, different chemicals release. So I think movement is like, you should probably do more activity for most people. Now, if you're a person that's like, I'm walking 10,000 steps a day, maybe, and you're like, I'm going to walk 20,000 steps a day. That's not better, and it's also not, our bodies become very, very efficient at things, right? And it won't have as much, if for instance, somebody's goal is, well, I want to move more because I want to burn more calories, right? There's a Herman Poncer, who's the number one one of the top metabolic researchers that just came out with a book called Burn, and it's excellent. He goes like, no, you'll actually just adapt, right? Your energy is going to go elsewhere, and that's actually one of the things I do want to talk about a little bit. And we can go right now.
No, I'm saying stay on this topic.
Stay on the topic. Okay,
I'm giving
cool.
Luca hand signals.
Yeah.
Still going move. Still going move.
We're on move.
But essentially, it's like more is not always better. And it, progressive overload is excellent. So this is my main point on just about everything, right? Like, all the studies show, if you add a ton of stress, right, you'll actually get some fast results, but then you're just going to see a decline, right? If you have moderate stress, you don't really have good results because there's not enough to stimulate, a change. But if you have progressive overload, and this goes for strength training too, we'll touch on. If you progressively overload the system, the body adapts and grows, or should I say grows, right? Makes adaptations to improve performance. So same thing with move. Like, if you're not moving, start moving. If you're moving, if you're doing 10, 12, 15,000 steps a day and you don't have some type of job that kind of gets you doing that, more might not be better here. Very likely won't be, to be honest with you, right? And so find that spot of, on the move side of things, is I'm pretty sure that everybody can move more. Again, this is just my experience of, coaching people. I would say 90+% of people that we see are not, for instance, doing 6,000 to 8,000 steps a day, right? So it would probably be good for them to do that. Again, I don't say 10,000 because that's just a number that sounds good. But if you're somebody that's like, hey, I was doing 10,000 steps a day. Now I'm doing 20,000 steps a day. You probably want to reel it back in.
Okay, I'm going to reel you back in.
Okay.
So I am a little confused. Can we go back to my question? So my question was, if we have somebody that has I don't know let's just say they're working out 3 times a week. How did they know where to start looking when they're listening to this podcast and they're saying, you know what, I don't spend a lot of time recovering or doing recovery movement or using any recovery tools or doing anything. I don't really know where to begin. I also don't know if my body needs more recovery. Like, what are some things that we say, okay, hey, General Pop, is there a checklist? Like, number one thing that I need you to do for recovery is sleep. Okay.
So, I mean, you have to assess things to know where you're at.
Great.
Period.
How can they assess it?
Well, sleep, I mean, now there are enough sleep trackers, even on your phone or if you got a watch. And they're not, excellent, but you know what? They'll give you a nice little, you slept this long. If you have things like an Oura Ring, even Fitbits or things like that, they'll tell you how long you've had deep sleep for. So they will give you feedback, right? So you can go to sleep and wake up in the morning and go like, oh, I slept for 6.5 hours and 30 minutes of it was deep sleep. Ooh, that's not great, right? So it will give you data. Look at your data, do it for at least a couple of weeks so that you know where you're at, okay?
So sleep is the number one thing that they should look at.
I mean, certainly a big rock, okay? That's a big rock. The second one that's basic that everybody can do is just resting heart rate in the morning. So even though it's like not the greatest of all time, anybody can wake up tomorrow morning and check their resting heart rate. So maybe to have a watch or a monitor. If not, all you do is you lay there so if an alarm wakes you up, just chill for about 30 to 60 seconds. And then, measure how many beats per minute you're getting in the first 15 seconds, multiply it by 4. Right? So if you get 15 beats in 15 seconds, that means you got resting heart rate is going to be 60. Why does this matter? Well, we know it is a predictor, right? So the lower your resting heart rate, usually the better your aerobic system is. And the more relaxed you are, the higher it is, the more stressed you are, your aerobic system isn't, working as well. But if you wake up and you have a resting heart rate of 70, well, that's not a problem, but it's something to look at and go like, we want to reduce this, right? And then how do you reduce that? Well, you, number one, manage stress better. 2, aerobic work. So lower, kind of like nowadays they call it zone 2 cardio for most people, but it's that medium intensity cardio that's not really, really hard, but kind of gets you sweating. So that would be like something to do. But again, we're assessing it, right? We're going like, hey, how much sleep are we getting? Is it good sleep? What's the resting heart rate in the morning? You guys have probably heard HRV. You guys heard of HRV? Right, so that's heart rate variability.
Sorry, can I go back to sleep? You mentioned
yes.
deep sleep, and how many hours in deep sleep would the ideal?
Off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure, but I think like if you're sleeping 8 hours a night, I think deep sleep should be about 2.5.
Okay.
And again, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure. But I mean, a lot of folks will get like very little deep sleep. I'm talking about, I don't know, just examples of my buddy Andy, who's definitely fixed it a lot. But he'd be laying in bed. I just call it. They were laying in bed for about 7 hours. And Oura Ring was like, you got 3 minutes of deep sleep or 5 minutes of deep sleep, right? For a number of reasons, whether it's he had a like hip replacement surgery, all this stress and pain, and so on and so forth. So again, we're assessing because we just want to know what's going on, right? You can't change something if you don't know where you're at. To me, it's like a GPS, right? You are here on the GPS, point A. Where do you want to go? Okay, point B. This is the result that you want to achieve. HRV is really important, okay? I mean, really important. It's just a really good marker. Now, I don't want to sit here on the show and just be like, everybody should go get, Morpheus or a Whoop or whatever, right? But the science, I've been fortunate enough that my friend Joel Jameson was pretty much one of the pioneers of putting HRV on an app, right? In 2011, he called it BioForce. But I was able to learn all this, stuff about HRV from him and how useful it is. But the HRV score essentially tells you, not to get too geeky about it, but like it shows you how stressed out you are, okay? So if you know you're tired and stressed, that the score is going to be lower. If you're in a recovery mode, it's going to be higher, right? But again, it's a marker to be able to tell you like how tired you are, right? So if you had a really tough workout, or you know what it shows even more so, if you didn't get a lot of sleep, you went out drinking last night, HRV score plummets, right? Your readiness is low. But again, it's visual. So for a person, it gives them a little feedback, like, damn, like those 4 or 5 drinks last night, you know, they really did a number. And I think that's good for people, right? I think it's good for people because if you don't get a lot of sleep, you know, you're drinking, you know, you're out and not getting your rest, like this is how it affects you, right? So I don't know if we'll have time to really dig into heart rate variability because we can look into that a lot. But that's another thing to look at. And then it's just, when it comes to training, this is very, very simple. Like, are you seeing yourself progress, right? So if, you know, over the course of not necessarily workouts, but definitely weeks or a month-long program, hey, are you getting stronger? Like, are you able to lift more weight? Are you able to do more reps? Does the conditioning workout seem easier? And I would even say, like, this is why I think heart rate monitoring is so important, because if we do something conditioning based, and when we look at your heart rate and see how fast it drops at the end of the workout, or we see which zone you're working in, I can tell, okay, Kaisa's fitter, or hey, Kaisa's really tired, right? Like this workout she did last week, she smoked it and her heart rate was lower. This week, she's exhausted, her heart rate's higher. What's going on? Like, I'm going to talk to you, and you might be like, oh man, crazy stressful week, right? But the thing is, we have to see improvements in our performance in the direction that we're going. And if we're not, that means that something's stuck. Usually it means we're not being able to recover from what we're doing, right?
Yes, I appreciate that. And I'm going to take it even back a notch, because I think even the things that you're handing us right now are amazing, but those are amazing for people that are already invested in a more intense schedule of training, that understand heart rate variability and all these other things. Let's go into the most general conversation. Let's just say it's, how do you break these down? Because I think what I didn't hear you say is like nutrition, hydration. I think there's a handful of things. If somebody's just saying, if what they're saying right now is I'm training and I'm following a program and I'm not seeing results and I'm frustrated because I'm going into the gym and I'm just feeling like I've done this for a month and nothing is happening. I'm more exhausted. Can you, without getting like technical about heart rate variability or other things, what are some things that they should be doing?
Well, when we go, like, you know, again, when we go back to those 5, when you talk about, for instance, you know, the training part of it is definitely aligning like what they can recover from. Again, if you're doing too many, I'm going to just give an example of what a lot of people do, okay, in why they kind of get into a roadblock. Take, for example, you know, high intensity interval training. There's a lot of, you know, gyms and classes and things like that. And somebody's like, I'm gonna get in shape. And then they start doing, for instance, 5 days a week of really high intensity training, right? Like pushing themselves because it's like, I'm gonna exhaust myself because that's gonna get me results. And in the short term, like very short term, 4 to 6 weeks, you will see some adaptations, right? And then you get stuck. Because beyond that, then the body just can't recover from all this hard work that they're doing, right? So I think that it's very, very important for people to understand that, you know, 2 to 3, what I call development workouts, those are the ones where you push the most, is probably the maximum for most people, right? Per week, yes. And then because I call them develop, stimulate, or rebound. So develop is where you challenge yourself the most, right? Think above, you know, you're training above 90% intensity. And that's, you know, whether you're lifting weights, whether you're doing conditioning, right? You're really challenging yourself. And, you know, you call it rate of perceived exertion, you know, is in that 9-10, you know, range. For most people, honestly, too. I think that when people are starting off, less is more. So don't do 3, do maybe 2, maybe even do 1. And then you have stimulate days. Stimulate days are those medium hard training days, right? Where they're more like a 7 or 8 on a rate of perceived exertion. Meaning, you know, if you're lifting weights, you leave 2 reps in the tank, 3 reps in the tank. You know, if you're doing conditioning, you know, you're for instance, in the green zone, or it's like you should be tired, but you didn't exhaust yourself. Okay.
And then one of those per week?
No. I would do anywhere from, so if you do, for example, if you just did one development day, I'd probably do 3 stimulate days, right? 2 or 3 stimulate days. If I did 2 development days, I'd probably do 2 stimulate days, right? And then you'd have rebound days. Rebound days are actually recovery workouts, and we'll break down what that is, right? But it's a workout that will actually help you speed up your recovery, okay? And so you'd probably do about 2 of those. So if you're training 5 to 6 days a week, you can kind of see how this breaks down. And most people don't kind of organize their training week like that, because it's like, well, I'm going to go in and I'm going to crush myself, right? Like, and now all of a sudden, if you have, you got this goal that fires you up and you're motivated, and maybe you're with a group of people or you go to a gym, and all of a sudden now every day becomes a development day, right? And that's no bueno.
Okay, this is awesome, because I'm going to organize this so I can visually see it, and I think this is really going to help people. So right now, for most of us, we're in the train bucket right now. And
yes,
just
correct.
to reiterate,
yep.
Number one thing that you should look at, let's just look at the breakdown of your weekly schedule. I am someone who wants to go into the gym, and let's say I go in 5 days a week, and Luca has experienced this with me. I'm like, I want to go ham. I want to go crazy. It doesn't work. And if it works, what he's saying is it works for 4 to 6 weeks, and then you're basically going to plateau. So let's just not get there. Let's just listen to what he's saying. So we want 2, let's just start with 2 hard development workouts. Then we want to look and adjust and have 2 stimulate workouts. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that should be down to that 7 out of a 10 effort.
Yep.
And then we want 2 rebound workouts, which are recovery workouts.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, we're not going to get into any details of that yet.
Okay.
All right, team. We've looked at our training. Now we're going to go back.
One more thing on training. So again, if we put that in the train bucket, the bucket I just talked about was managing your loads and organizing your loads, right? It's important. Like, you have to have a structure to make sure you progress. But number 2 is improving your aerobic engine, your aerobic training. So this is really important, right? Think about this.
Can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
Wait, we're not going to go into the details of breaking down our workouts yet. I'm just getting a few of these other buckets.
Okay.
To simplify sleep, we all know that bucket is 7 to 8 hours. You need that. Mm-hmm. Can we just go into 2 other buckets? Because I think these are the main things that General Pop needs to look at, which is hydration and fueling.
So that would be under eating. So under that 5, like, obviously hydration comes under that.
Yes. So
hydration is interesting because, and actually, this is from our buddy, Dr. Mike.
Hey.
Yeah. So, you absolutely have to hydrate, because for instance, if you drop 3, the marker that we want to avoid at all costs is losing 3% of our weight from hydration. Then you get into trouble, right? Performance drops dramatically, fatigue, so on and so forth. And that can actually happen, faster than you think, especially, think about humid, hot summer days, things like that. So we got to hydrate, but, there's been all this stuff now about, like, you got to drink, I don't know how much water. I'm going to give you the super simple breakdown.
Thank you.
So with every meal, you should probably have a glass of water, right? It's simple. Because hydration is also, if you eat a lot of fruits and veggies, you actually get hydration from that, right? So you have to, people that eat more fruits and vegetables actually have to drink less, right? Water or fluids. So a glass of water with every meal. Then between the time that you have your meals, if you drink like 16 ounces of water and just sip on it, you're fine, right? Throughout a training session, you can just sip on water and be okay, unless your training sessions start becoming long, meaning, like over an hour, but more so like 90 minutes. That's when like hydration drinks come into play. Things like, an LMNT maybe a little bit, or liquid IV where you got a little more extra sodium and potassium. But if your workouts are like 30 minutes long, 45 minutes long, like, you don't need this crazy extra hydration, right? So I want to, I just want to say that, because there's swinging the pendulum, too little and too much. Now, the statistics are pretty crazy, right? I think it's like 77% of men and 71% of women are, it's called hypohydrated. It's not dehydrated, but it's on the path to being dehydrated. And remember, dehydrated is where you get about, loss of 3% of body weight. what that means is that like if you hydrated more, you'll feel better, you'll recover faster. And again, you'll also, because when you are dehydrated or hypohydrated, your core temperature also goes up, which means that you get more tired when you train. And everybody's experienced this, right? You do the same workout, but it's hotter, and you drank the same amount of fluids, which you lost faster, right? Because it was hotter. And you're like, oh my God, this workout's so much harder, right? It's because your core temperature goes up, everything feels more challenging, which is exactly the reason why you should be hydrating more. So those are my rules: is drink a glass of water with every meal, sip on about 16 to 24 ounces of water in between that. And then during the training session, sip on water or any type of, me personally, I like everything to be flavored. So it's like fluids, that preferably have, no calories and stuff like that. But, and that's it. Now, if you're an athlete that does 2-a-days, and you're training more than 90 minutes per day, or doing it twice, then you got to kind of, I would say, bump that up a little bit. But beyond that, you don't. Right.
And I just want to underline that because I remember having a whole episode with Dr. Mike about him saying we're so used to thinking that if we go to do a workout, most of the time, even if it's 30 to 60 minutes, we need to have a Gatorade. We need to have some type of.
True.
And he was like, that's just exactly like that's just so not necessary. Also, it's just a lot of added sugar that a lot of people don't need in a lot of those.
No, exactly. And I think too, you got to always look at the marketing side of things and go, because I think that actually most people. If you have quality nutrition, you don't need all this sodium and potassium and magnesium, right? If you have solid nutrition. If you don't, it can be helpful. But again, I've had folks that all of a sudden go, oh my God, I'm drinking this every day. And I'm like, you don't need to drink that every day.
And I think it's hard because media makes you think, like a lot of times you see what these elite athletes are doing and we just can't compare ourselves to like a Serena, LeBron. Like what they're doing in terms of their training, they're asking so much more from their bodies. So they're taking care of it and putting things in it that are just totally different. And I think media does that so that we can, or marketing does that so that we like buy into a lot of that, but we just don't. In our daily routine and schedule and how we take care of ourselves, we just don't need that.
Well, yes, because you got to think about it. Like if an athlete is doing, and I train a lot of high-level athletes to where they're going to do a 2-a-day. That means that they have to recover and recoup and have the energy also to be ready for that second, for that second session, which may mean more calories, more hydration, right? Because they have to be prepared to perform at that moment in time. So that's very, very different, right? Where a general population might be, I do my training session. Great, let's start recovering as soon as you possibly can. Whereas another, a pro athlete might be like, I have to actually be ready for another bout of on the field stuff. I just did my weights, whatever else it may be. So it has to, all these things, I just gave a general foundation that will work for everybody. And then it's like you individualize the more, the realm of athleticism that you go into, but that works when it comes to hydration.
Awesome. Okay, right. We're moving buckets.
So hold on before we go. The gallon of water. Oh. I see that everywhere. Brian,
listen, that's pretty much.
Do we need to drink a gallon of water?
That's like 10,000 steps. Okay. It's just out of nowhere.
So half gallon is probably okay.
It's fine. If you want to get, there's a formula for hydration. A buddy of mine's name's Dr. Andy Galpin, genius guy. But you can literally go on YouTube and just go hydration formula, Dr. Andy Galpin, and he's got like an article and a short video to break it down exactly. Like, if you weigh this much during the training session, this is how much you should drink. This is how many ounces of fluids you should drink every 15 minutes. If you want to get more granular about it, just look it up, and I'm not going to dig in.
Can you overhydrate?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So, with this gallon of water, you can. I'm just
No.
purely thinking of my friend Brian here. He walks around with a giant gallon, and I'm looking out for him in case he's overhydrating.
You can overhydrate, actually. Yeah, you can. And so, again, maybe he eats a lot of fruits and veggies and then drinks more throughout the day, and then he gets a gallon on top of that. Like that may be too much. Also, peeing 72 times a day is not my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we're moving on. Doing awesome. So we're gonna go.
We should stay in an eat bucket because we got to talk about protein.
Okay. Well, I do want to go into fueling. So we're doing. Good. So I'm creating a chart for all of us visual people. I'm creating a chart that they can sit and say, okay, I'm gonna look at a bunch of these buckets of things. So we've touched on training. We'll go into details of all these. We've touched on training. We've touched on sleep. We've touched on hydration. Now I want to touch on fueling. Not that we need to deep dive into it in an hour-long conversation, but I want to talk about fueling for recovery in terms of like, we can talk about protein, if there are certain things that people should be including into their daily, diet. But brief.
Okay. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible.
Not sciencey.
Well, let's start with, most of the foods you should eat or should be whole unprocessed foods. I like the 80-20 rule. And just from the standpoint that if we whole unprocessed foods, we're getting a lot of the nutrients that we need, right? So again, if it's, lean meats and then veggies and different forms of starches, that's a very important factor from the get-go. And then we got to look at energy balance, right? So look, we give our body food because that is fuel. And I'm talking strictly recovery right now. I'm not talking, you want to lose body fat and get leaner, all that good. Like, I'm talking about strictly, give your body the fuel it needs to recover, right? Which means that you got to, again, for most people, they're not going to go calculating their calories and trying to do all that stuff. But it does mean that you have to fuel enough, right? So again, if you're not eating enough, what's going to happen? You're going to be more fatigued, right? You're not going to be able to perform as much. So you got to take in enough calories. And I think it is important to, have some idea of what that is, right? And look, if we look calorically, for most people, 14 calories per pound of body weight is maintenance-ish, right? 13 to 14. Again, I'm just giving you an idea because if somebody that's 150 pounds, you're going to be like, okay, cool. Well, that's going to be 2,000-ish calories, right? Now,
we don't.
I know.
Count
I already know.
Okay.
I already know. But I'm saying that like you do have to have an idea of the amount of food that is, because there's a lot of folks that might be undereating, overeating, whatever it may be, right? Neither is great for recovery, right? Too much food is not good for recovery. Too low food is not good for recovery. But one thing that I do know that almost everybody kind of misses the boat on is the protein, right? Protein is the building block, right? Proteins are made up of amino acids. It's what helps us build muscle, maintain muscle. And it also signals to our body, right? Protein synthesis, right? So it's really, really important. And I think that just about any goal that anybody has does not include losing muscle, right? So here's a super simple kind of outline here. 120 grams of protein per day, up to 1 gram per pound of body weight, right? So I really think like 120 is the minimum people should shoot for. But, the more active you are, the more you strength train, the more you do, that should kind of be more, towards the higher thing. So I'm 200 pounds, I'm shooting for, obviously I strength train, I want to maintain my muscle, build muscle, a gram per pound of body weight. So that would be 200 grams of protein per day. And the other thing that's pretty important is splitting it up, right? So into 3 to 4 meals, because our body does a good job absorbing synthesizing only a certain amount of protein. Meaning, if I take in 30 grams to 40 grams for lunch, right? If I have 100, it's not gonna increase protein synthesis. So it's what I'm saying is it's better to have 3 to 4 meals with that protein in there than having like 1 or 2 meals with all the protein in there, right?
Is it a myth that your body can only digest or handle 20 grams of protein per
about
meal?
30, but no, not. But this is the misconception. Basically, if you're wanting to build muscle, like there's only so many grams of protein that the body can synthesize. But that doesn't mean you should not eat more protein, right? Protein in general is, well, number one, it's filling. Number two, it's a thermogenic food, right? So thermogenic food means that you actually have to do a lot of work to break protein down. Actually, I think it's like 30% of calories get burned digesting protein. For carbs, it's like 12%, and fat, it's 3%, right? So for anybody that's kind of like, well, I want to get leaner. Well, protein is a thermogenic food. So it's going to keep you fuller, and you're going to burn more calories like eating it. So, you got that right there, which makes the most sense. But it doesn't mean don't eat more protein. It just means this is how much you're going to be able to absorb. So it's smarter for you to do, 3. If you want to maintain or build muscle, it's better to have, 3 meals, maybe a 4, 3 in a shake or something like that, than just do 2 and try to, stack up 100 grams of protein in those meals. It's just, it's the science of it that just gives us feedback to go like, hey, this is smarter to do if your goal is performance, recovery, and building muscle. Right?
Awesome. I love that. So on the fueling, we're going to leave it with protein unless there's we're not going to talk about supplements yet, but if there's any other kind of like tips that people should be looking at in their fueling.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, like, let's just make sure that people understand that carbs are like really important and that they're not bad, because you still get this whole, conversation. If I'm eating too much carbs, like carbs are fuel, it's the number one form of fuel for our brain. And, our brain needs a lot of energy. So our brain weighs 2 pounds and uses 25% of all the glycogen in the body, which is why when you go low carb, and I've trained a lot of competitors, what happens, they get like brain fog, right? Like you can't think straight. You go low carb, you get irritable. So, and there's always somebody who goes like, but it's not essential. I'm like, well, you can live without it, but it's not optimal. And who doesn't love carbs? Come on now.
What about the protein shake? I think that's just like the Gen Pop classic. You go to the gym, I need to get my protein shake. Is that, as long as it's not loaded with sugar and whatever, is that a good thing Gen Pop should be doing?
It's just a different, like for instance, the first thing, and I'm going to give you guys an example of what happens, when we coach clients. When we look at how much protein they're taking, it's usually very low. Right? It's actually one of those things that can really help somebody recover faster, build muscle, it's good for body composition, yada, yada, right? And so then, let's say you're taking in 50 grams of protein, right? But you kind of should be at 180, okay? That's a big gap. Now, eat an extra 130 grams of protein in real food, chicken, lean, right? Eggs. It's very filling. Like people will come back to us and go like, man, I can't get in all this food. I'm trying to eat all this food and I can't. So, protein shake just becomes like something that's really easy. I mean, it's liquid, so it's a lot easier to get that in. Absorbs a little bit faster. And again, it just makes it convenient. I think that's the kind of number one thing is the convenience of it, right? If I can have a 40-gram protein shake once a day, that's kind of like a big meal that would fill me up, but this doesn't. So I think that's where it really comes into play. There's, forms of protein, we could say a lot, but, the best probably is whey isolate. And if some people are, you can get plant-based proteins. They're not as good, but, it's obviously it can still do the trick. And that, I think those are the kind of most important factors that because I want people to get snippets and go like, whoa, I'm under eating on protein. Great. Yeah. Get it up to 120 grams or a gram per pound of body weight. If work on that goal, and like you'll be way better off, right?
I think I'm gonna have to do a protein challenge this month and see the difference, because
I guarantee this month. We're already doing a challenge.
Oh yeah, we're already
doing. Let's do it next month.
Yeah, we're doing sugar free. Okay, I'm gonna do.
I guarantee you're under.
I think I'm under. We're calculating this, and I'm thinking I am way under on my protein. But this is why this conversation is so awesome. We keep saying Gen Pop, and I just want everyone who's listening, it's general population is what we're referring to, just because that's who we all really are right now. And I want to have a conversation that we all of us general pop people can take this back and go and kind of like insert ourselves in and figure out where we're at. So this is so helpful, Luca. Let's go into supplementation, because I think one of the other buckets is supplementation. And I'm on the spectrum of not a lot of supplementation. Now I've been adding some more Thorne things and I think it really helps, but I would love for you to just kind of, I know you can talk about each of these forever, but just kind of overarching, if there's a handful of things that you're like, we're all deficient at this supplement really helps you to recover in some way, shape or form. And these are what I would suggest.
Okay, I will preface first. There's a reason they're called supplements, right? They supplement your regular nutrition. I think they're valuable. But again, if you really improve your nutrition and get mostly whole unprocessed foods, like you won't need a lot of supplementation. So just things that I think can be very helpful. One is greens drinks, right? And here's why. Because again, kind of like protein, if I can do a scoop of a quality greens drink, like, my friend started Athletic Greens, which is one of the...
sore subject.
I knew it was coming. I was just on the tip.
Do we have to beef about it?
We're just... Still haven't been sent any samples. So.
They just they sponsor
Chris,
everyone.
Yeah.
But no, don't even worry
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you know
Alright,
who
send my
came
people.
and saved the day? Thorn.
Yep.
And their athletic greens is fire. It's
good.
Okay.
It's so good. So
It's again any type of quality. I would say because what is it, right? It's basically hydrogenated, broken down. Like it maintains all the nutrients. It's like 7 servings of veggies, right? I mean, so you get and probably have prebiotics, probiotics, and all it is it's not meant to replace stuff. It's meant to supplement it. Because I feel good, getting up in the morning, doing a greens drink, and it's like, all right, look, I got all these nutrients in. It doesn't have any calories. Because again, if your body's nutrient deficient, you're gonna start having issues. So that's just one of those. Again, it's what would be? I mean, it's just an easy to do thing, right? It's a high return on investment of something that can take you, 20 seconds to do. From there. Protein, we mentioned it, right? Protein as a supplement in and of itself, I think is one of the most valuable things because it can kind of get you to those numbers that we talked about. Then from there, I actually start kind of like weaning off of, what's really, really necessary. I think creatine is very helpful, by the way. What are the 2 most studied supplements in history? It's creatine and caffeine, right? Most proven, most studied, right? And creatine is super, super safe. It's also, at the beginning, creatine would always be promoted because it helps you increase strength and strength endurance, right? It basically pulls hydration into the cell, right? And into the muscular cell. So that's why it helps you with performance. And it's been proven it helps with performance. But there's also, now these last years been showing that it's also good for brain health, right? So creatine taking 3 to 5 grams a day, super simple, post-workout shake, and you're good to go. So I do like that when it comes to recovery and performance. From there, I kind of switch into, so there's, again, these are like pebbles. When I start mentioning these are kind of like pebbles, okay? Rhodiola, ashwagandha, leucine, those are things that can help, like ashwagandha and rhodiola, for instance. I know Thorn actually has a rhodiola that's good. They help you prevent adaptive stress, right? So they help with recovery. But again, they would, it's not even a drop in the bucket if you go, you have crappy sleep, and then it's like, yeah, but I'm taking ashwagandha and rhodiola, right? The other side is, we talked about sleep. I think that's where you can do some good stuff with supplementation for sleep. So, and we can go back to sleep, but this is supplementation for sleep. And one of them is melatonin. Now, let me preface the melatonin thing, okay? Because most supplements on the market have too much melatonin in it. And what will happen is I actually think that 0.5 to 1 milligrams is a good serving there. And you'll see most of the stuff on the market is like 5, 10, 15. And what will happen is you'll be knocked out and you'll wake up really groggy. And the problem is if you use it too much, your natural melatonin production will go down. So I would highly recommend if you do melatonin, be on the lower side because a lot of studies also show that 1 milligram is just as effective as, for instance, a 5. But there's some downsides to the 5 because you'll be really groggy. And again, it can throw stuff off. So sometimes if you buy melatonin in a store, you might have to, crack it in half or a quarter and take that. So that's one, but I do find it helpful. If you have a tough time sleeping, I think it's good. Leuthin, which is another one that can calm you down.
How do you say it?
I think it's Leuthin.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Again, it calms you down, which allows you to sleep. Same thing with magnesium, right? Magnesium, it doesn't necessarily help you sleep, but it can help you calm down. Also is an important thing when it comes to your body's regulation. Like most people actually are deficient in magnesium. And so when we talk in deficiencies, magnesium and zinc, most people are quite deficient in. So taking those supplements, again, they're cheap. They're, it's like an easy, kind of pop a pill and it helps out. So,
and with all this too, you can just go get your blood taken and get samples to know if you're deficient in any of these things, which is a good thing to start with too before you just start popping everything, right?
Amen.
Correct.
Yes.
I think that most people, at least on a yearly basis, should do blood work and do all of their blood work. Think about it. You go, to the doctor and you have, because most of the doctor's visits don't really touch on all this stuff, but if you can get your hormones done, you know, your deficiencies done in different vitamins and minerals, it will give you a picture, right? It will give you a picture of like what you're deficient in, and then you would just get those supplements, right? So I think that's very, very valuable, because again, what is blood work? It's an assessment, right? It's an assessment of where you are and where you want to be, and health and performance. Think about this. That picture of your blood work is telling you, you know, whether you're healthy, or again, if your testosterone levels are lower, your cortisol's through the roof, like you're probably too stressed out, right? So I think, and now we have, I mean, with all these different companies, there's very affordable ways to get your blood work done and be able to look at it and go like, wow, okay, I need to improve X, Y, Z. So there's definitely, I believe, you know, I did it when I was not sleeping. I would do it every 6 months to check how much everything was improving, especially my hormones at that point in time.
Which is really motivating to a lot of people. Okay, you are doing so awesome. We have one more bucket, and then what?
Well, I was gonna say we're kind of like at that time. Do we want to keep?
Can we do one more bucket? But
Okay.
and then part 2 this.
We'll do a part 2.
Yeah.
I did have a couple supplement questions. You don't have any supplement questions?
No, because you go if you have some supplements.
Quick rapid fire then.
Okay.
It's from personal.
Yeah.
So like fish oil, krill oil. How is that pebble, medium, or not even? Is that dust?
Yeah. It makes, again, look.
Dust.
So if you ate enough fish throughout the week in your diet and your nutrition, not that big of a problem.
Let's say you never eat fish.
If you never eat fish, you probably should supplement with something like a krill oil, quality fish oil. Because the American diet is very, very deficient in omega-3s, but high in omega-6 and 9s, right? So think more. We want more anti-inflammatory. So that's the other thing when it comes to food, you know. But that's why I started with saying eat more whole, unprocessed foods, right? Because again, we want things that are more anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, like inflammation is not bad. This is the other thing that people.
Hold on, before we go there, let's stick to the quick fire.
All right, let's go.
Thank you.
Quick fire.
Because there's another hot one on the market that I am taking, but I'm curious. Collagen.
So collagen is not a great protein source, but it has proven it's good, for instance, for skin, for nails, I think even for eyesight and stuff, but not what it was promoted to do. It's
Because they're kind of promoting the joint health a lot. Not as much.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a complete protein. What the studies have shown, it is helpful with things like skin and nails and things like that.
Okay.
So the easiest thing to do with collagen, honestly, if you do I'll make a protein smoothie, put my regular whey protein in and everything else, you know, my spinach, blueberries, blend it all up, and I'll put collagen in there too. No downside. But
if it's small, I mean, it's kind of pricey. All the brands with the collagen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
not cheap.
people are buying it as a main protein source. I wouldn't do that.
Gotcha. Okay.
I would, like I said, stick with whey isolate. Way better.
But if you want some good quality Jefferson
Hair,
curls,
yeah.
I mean, look, this. I'll tell you what.
I knew you were gonna give me that.
Don't leave her hanging. Don't leave her hanging.
Oh, sorry about that. I thought it was going to be a hit, so I was starting to flinch a little bit.
Mike's over here.
Yeah.
I mean, put it this way: there's not enough collagen to get my hair back. So
Okay, last one, glucosamine, because I've heard a lot that there was
is glutamine or glucosamine?
Glucosamine for like joint health.
Again, it's a pebble, right? It's one of those things where like there's so many different things that you can do for joint health that, you know, and I honestly like doing more, I would say, omega-3s and adding more fish in your diet and things that like foods that have omega-3s is better than buying a bunch of glucosamine. I mean, and it's, again, look, you know, there's supplements on the market that have a combination of things that, you know, reduce inflammation, and I think they're valuable, but again,
they're small.
You just have to look at this. To me, the problem ends up being that, like, you know, marketing and media can shine a light on, like, are your joints hurting? And, you know, get this pill, but you're not doing any mobility. You know, you're not moving around enough. You're not getting enough sleep. You know, your diet is very inflammatory. So sugars, processed foods, too many calories. And it's like you got all these big rocks that you can address. They'll make a massive difference. And then you got this little thing, you know, and it's like, I'm taking the pills. And it's not going to move the needle much. Okay. So I think that's the big picture that I kind of want to, you know, go over here. You have way more control over things. Like tomorrow you could feel a lot better doing some of the stuff that we're talking about, where you
Eat
know,
well, sleep well, hydrate. Those are way bigger than popping a bunch of pills.
Move, exercise. And again, you know, in part 2 we can dig into more of like maybe the details of that, right? But again, if you don't feel well and you just go for a walk and you do some, you know, mobility one or starter, you know,
Shout
the
out.
name in there. Wow.
then you know you'll feel better. Like you'll feel better. Period. You know?
Yeah.
I love this. This is so helpful, Luca. I love your like big stones or big rocks, pebbles, sand. I think that's really important for people to grab onto. Last bucket here before we wrap part 1 is the management of stress and the mental aspect. And we don't have to go really deep into this, but say someone like me. You did this to me the other day. My life is very stressful, and Luca has never done this to me, but he raised his voice. And that was a moment of like, oh shit.
Did that stress you out though?
Yeah, it did stress me out. But no, he was basically, because I am obviously very hard-headed, and his whole point was like, no. And what he wanted me to do was breath work. And so can we just touch on a few things? If you have clients, all of us have stress. So if you have clients like me that are coming in and we're doing a handful of the other big stones, what are 1 or 2 things that you are suggesting for stress management?
Okay. I know that you're going to be like, yeah, listen, I really, really want to share this because I feel that if I do, people will kind of get the idea of why stress management is so important.
You want to tell a story?
I want to tell some principles because the principles will really, really help people. I promise you. Okay. So the way that like our brain regulates everything, right? And it's like, it basically dictates where the energy should go. The first place it goes is resting metabolic rate. So it's like what keeps our heart going, what keeps our lungs going, digestive system. That's where calories and energy go first, right? To keep us alive. Okay. So that's number 1, no matter what. Number 2, our energy goes towards movement, so activity like moving around, living our life, and stress. Okay, this is why this point is very important. Stress is a lot of energy. You know why? Because when you stress out, your body is like fight or flight, and then your brain is allocating energy. Remember homeostasis? We talked about it. It's allocating energy to get it back to normal. Okay. Only third does your brain go, here's energy towards repairing tissues, building muscle, all the stuff that we want, right? When we exercise. Okay? What does that mean? Well, the reason why I said this before you talked about stress is that people don't think about how much energy stress takes out of us. Okay? So what that means is if you're a person that has a very stressful life and doesn't do well with stress management, it's affecting your recovery so much more than you can ever imagine, right? Because again, your brain doesn't care about your 6-pack and you running faster and building more muscle. It cares about survival. And so if there's all this stress, it's gonna put all the energy into trying to mitigate that stress and get it back to homeostasis. And it will not care about you know, losing body fat and building muscle and building bone density, right? So that's where we start. And so this is why stress management is so important. Now, how do we manage stress? Right? We talked about managing stress through training, okay? And then this is the thing I wanted to bring up earlier, but I think it's excellent time to do it. Doing cardio, okay? And I'm talking about aerobic. There's different types of cardio. Higher intensity is anaerobic, right? That means without oxygen. So there's 2 types there, which we won't touch on right now. And aerobic is with oxygen. But the thing is, the aerobic system is the basically engine of life, right? Right now, our aerobic system's working. For recovery, our aerobic system is working. It's actually the main system, cardio system that's working. So if we enhance that system, we recover faster, right? So people that are very stressed out should do more cardio, but they should do more aerobic cardio. Right? So remember how there's a time like do more cardio so you can burn more fat, right? Do more cardio so you can be healthier. Every marker when you look at the things that show longevity, meaning people that live the longest, have the best cardio and the best HRV scores, right? To a degree that the top 10% of people that have VO2 max live 11% longer. That's 7 years. 7 years. Like, would you like to live 7, 8 years longer? Yes, please. Okay, great. Start implementing more cardio. Now, Kaisa knows what that is because we started doing, aerobic capacity work. It's actually not. It's not the crush you cardio. It's the exact opposite. It's like, studies show that like 72 to 86, 88% of your max heart rate. So, that's probably like 140, 135, 140, 160 beats a minute max, right?
But my heart rate is at 90 because it's just so frustrating to do that work. Like, this is when Luca said,
that's the thing, though.
Do sled pulls for 30 minutes.
For 30 minutes and like do it in a way. But this is the type of work that like, I'll give you the breakdown of it. Like, you should be like, so if you're doing it for 45 minutes, okay, 30, 45 minutes, you'd be sweating, but you should always be able to talk to me. So if I'm like, hey, Kaisa, tell me like which moves you like. And you'd be like, well, Luca, I like that would be a cardio, right? You should never be like, I can't talk to you, right? 'Cause that's too much. And so that aerobic cardio, and you actually want to build that engine and that base as much as possible. Like, ideally, look, if you're not doing it, then start once a week. But I'm saying, like, that should be stuff that you're doing. The more stressed out you are, the more of your cardio training should be in those zones rather than in high intensity zones. So let me tell that. If you're a very stressed out person and you got a lot going on in life, it's a season of life, kids, work, not sleeping a lot, and then you go and do like the hardest cardio possible and like crazy circuits, that's crushing you. That is, I guarantee you that's not taking you to the goals that you want, right? And you're gonna hit the wall, and how does that show up? Fatigue. It shows up in getting like really hungry. For instance, like you want more and more calories, right? Because your body's like in survival mode and wants to get the nutrients in. It's gonna be joint pain, right? It's gonna be fatigue, irritability,
injuries.
Injuries, absolutely. Yeah, because too much inflammation, what happens, right? Tissues get damaged, and again, this is like, for instance, you're struggling with this too. Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
Yeah.
So real quick, is the aerobic conditioning days, is that part of their stimulate workouts or their rebound workouts?
I would couple that. You could kind of separate them, but I like that as a rebound workout.
Cool.
So, and rebound workouts are actually, they actually have a structure for a rebound workout. If you ever, you could literally go on YouTube and put Luca hosts of our rebound workout. I have a whole vlog of breaking it down exactly how to do it. But you start with breathing drills, and we'll talk about breathing because that's really important. So we'll start with breathing and mobility drills. Then we'll do aerobic work, right? This what we were talking about. From there we lift, but like really, so very low reps, something that just stimulates, right? Then gets blood into the muscles. Because on recovery days, we want to get as much blood into the body and getting those nutrients like everywhere, right? And so we actually will lift, but it's like 2 to 3 sets of 2 to 3 reps, lift the deadlift and then just drop it, right? No eccentric load. And then at the end, we'll finish off with like light stretching, light foam rolling, everything's lighter. So that session should take about 45 minutes long. And we legitimately call it a rebound workout, and it stimulates recovery. And there's actually Joel, my friend Joel Jamieson, who, legitimately #1 guy on the planet for conditioning, built the certification, wrote the book on it, and he's from Seattle. And he's done so much research on this where they were doing rebound workouts and then watching HRVs. Like if somebody did no training session and just rested on the couch versus did that, the recovery was way faster with the rebound workout. So it stimulates recovery, right? And that's what we want. Like we want after, like let's say we did a really hard training session one day, the next day we'd want to have a rebound workout to stimulate recovery. So this is a good cue. So if ideally for most people, I do a stimulate day, then a develop day. So like a mediumly hard day, then a really hard day, then a rebound day, cool. Right? Recover, and then again, stimulate, develop, rebound.
Love it.
Luca, that makes sense? Makes sense?
It makes
okay.
no sense. I am loving this. We have to pause this though.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2, and then I think we can get deeper into more of the workout granularity, I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Like go over some more examples.
Love it.
Yeah.
And this has been really helpful just to give us the bucket, and now we can kind of go in and into each one and get details.
And I love the big rocks, medium rocks, and
Sand
pebbles.
and pebbles.
I threw sand.
Oh, you threw sand. I was like, that was
Sand is
such a good
just
one.
dust.
Sand's everywhere.
You threw sand
It's
in my face.
nothing.
Mike.
Okay,
Yeah.
team, thank you so much. So part 1, we're just going to pause. We're going to do a part 2 that goes into more details of what we were discussing here today. Luca, I want to give you the biggest high five. Like, I feel like this conversation.
Yes! That's what I was waiting for.
Luca
Mike.
is like such a genius that his conversation sometimes is hard for me to grab onto. And I have so many takeaways from this. And I know everyone listening does too.
You know what?
So
I want to thank you for making me better at filming, calling me out, saying my filming is not at the highest level, which burnt me a little bit and hurt. And then I went home and I was like, I got to become better at filming.
He took it.
And then I took it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm an empty vessel. I want to get better. Then she tells me that, like, it's great, like you know your stuff and but you talk too much. And then, bam, another one, cha-cha, you know. And so today I came in. I did take my notes last night. I was like, I'm gonna do better. And so this is encouraging.
good.
for me.
Luca,
This is good.
you have done so
Let's
awesome
not get
today.
too celebratory
Okay.
because we still
Okay,
have
we still
another
have part
half.
two. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
so
gosh,
he might
okay.
sign
Halfway
off.
All right.
We're halfway
Stay
through.
with it.
Yeah, we're halfway
Okay,
through.
team, thank you so much for joining us here today. Luca, thank you. Very excited for
My
part
pleasure.
2. Mike, thank you for sharing the mic with me today, as
Absolutely.
always.
You know, you're doing a great job. I just want to say you're ready for this hosting thing. I know. I feel like a little stuffy,
Finally?
like a stuffed animal. Like I'm here for emotional support. You just need me here to just
I
off being
always
running.
need you.
Yeah, yeah.
I would
He's
never
like, hold
be
on.
able to do this
There he is.
without
There he is.
you.
Okay, I got a few questions for you,
Just
Luca.
pacifying.
Exactly.
All right, team. Thank you
right.
so much for tuning in. We'll see you back on the Kaisa Show very soon.